is this week. So Nintendo, again, like this whole year, they've just been really hard on the shadow drops of their Nintendo Direct Minis. And they still haven't had a Nintendo Direct itself for a long, long time now. But they did flag in this Nintendo Direct Mini partner showcase that it's the last one for the year. I'm not sure if that means the Nintendo Direct Minis in total, because, you know, they have Nintendo Direct Minis that aren't necessarily partner showcases, but it's all a bit confusing.
I took this as the last partner showcase one, but that doesn't mean that they definitely have something else before. You know, I will think they have something, but it's probably going to be a game specific, like a Hyrule Warriors Direct or something like that.
Yeah, I think logically, and you know, if you look at history as well, they're not going to have any more directs this year because it's Christmas period. So you kind of need to signal to everyone, here's the games, go out and buy them. You know, like don't wait on, because, you know, not everyone's as fortunate as us, and sometimes people are like, I can get one game for the holiday season. What game is it going to be? So you don't want to be hanging out for, oh, you know, is Breath of the Wild 2 going to come out or anything like that? You know, you kind of need to be pretty clear. Hey, these are the games. You know, if you want them, here they are. And then they'll reboot in January as they normally do. So yeah, like in terms of the Direct, it was a pretty decent one. So we had just the date for Bravely Default 2, which I still find very strange given that there's Bravely Default. And then, now I'm struggling to think of the
Bravely
sequel.
Second.
Yeah, Bravely Second.
I think that's
and then,
what it's called.
Yeah, that's what it's called. And then it's Bravely Default 2. So, I mean, this is just like such a classic Japanese RPG style of naming convention.
And they went a lot more into the game, and they talked about, you know, taking feedback from a demo that they had. And while I won't say that I'm the biggest fan of the art style, I understand the approach. I would be a lot more pumped for this game if I still hadn't kind of got Bravely Default and Bravely Second to play through, because I definitely want to play through them first. Yeah, so I got them on 3DS. So I definitely want to play through those before I hit this one. But other than that, like any game that's traditional, you know, turn-based JRPG, kind of that is basically a spiritual successor to classic Final Fantasy titles with the whole Crystal 4 Heroes thing, like it's great by me. And this game looks fantastic. So yeah, really, really good. And while it has it was originally meant to release this year, I mean, February's not that far away, so.
Nah, it's not that far away. And I don't know, this is going to be odd because I played a little bit of Bravely Default on the 3DS. I actually kind of like the art style in the 3DS game more than this, even though I know people are going to say it's the same art style, but it's just almost like the 3DS was blurry enough and muddy enough. It was sort of like, I kind of liked the way it looked. Whereas this, it's so crisp. I don't know, the style, the chibi style sort of thing. It's just
the art style is actually a bit different from what I've read. I didn't go and sit there and compare it myself, but reading a lot of people discussing about it, it's not like they've taken it directly. They have actually made it a bit different.
Yeah.
But
it's a bit more cartoony.
Well, one thing I'll say with this is that I think, so there's a game called World of Final Fantasy, which is absolutely fantastic if anyone wants it's basically Pokemon Final Fantasy, but it's hard as nails. It's one of the trickiest completions I've done in the last few years. And it's that game also initially, the art style, when you'd see trailers, I'm like, oh, I don't like that at all, but it grows on you. And I think this would probably grow on you as well. I just have the feeling that it's kind of initially a bit taken aback because, as you said, it's really high res and everything. But then, so I think it would win you over. But I mean, people are different. People have different takes on stuff. So.
You know how sometimes, you know, you develop an art style that fits the platform that you're on, and if you kind of just take it and go on something that's kind of, you know, a bit more high res or something, I don't know, just kind of didn't work for me. And then, yeah, we had No More Heroes 3, more gameplay was shown, and it was a really cool announcement that No More Heroes 1 and 2 are getting ported to the Switch. I know a lot of people were keen to see that happen. Very awesome way that was presented. Just, you know, it was very kind of non-Nintendo.
Oh,
yeah, it was pretty cool.
Everything about ever since the first No More Heroes, and the thing is, I've never had a chance to play them because I didn't have a Wii at the time when that game came out, and I got a Wii later, but I didn't go and pick up a lot of the games that I should have.
Yeah.
I wanted to play the sequel on 360, but I couldn't find it for cheap. It was, I think, only released in Japan. But now it's on Switch. I might, when they go on sale, I might pick them up. But what's interesting about No More Heroes 1 is it's going to be super interesting to hear people's opinions on that game that have never played one, because when that game came out, like, the Wii was not a powerhouse in any way, and it tried to do an open world, and let's just say that people love No More Heroes 1, but they don't love it for its empty open world. Let me just put that. So I would love to see people's take on first impression of that game in the modern day. But those games are all about style, like Suda 51 stuff. It's so batshit insane, but it works. So yeah, it's cool, and No More Heroes 3 looks really, really cool. So
yeah, it's just like one of those games. It's very hard for me to assess whether I'd like it or not. I don't know if there's a demo for it, because I'd be keen to play a demo, but it's not. It's also kind of not a game that you can really play a demo, right? Because there's so much to the game, and it's so odd, the game.
Yeah, it's weird. Did you ever play Killer 7?
No.
Okay. I'm just trying to think. Did you ever play Shadows of the Damned? I don't think you would have.
No. I'm familiar with what the kind of game is, but it's just, I don't know if it would click with me. It's so hard to tell. Like, a lot of the games I can look at and go, yeah, I know I'll like this game, or I'll have a crack. It's just one of the kind of games I'm like, I don't even know if I like this game at all, you know? I could always take advantage of EB's policy of 7-day return or something like that. I don't know.
We also had, they showcased, I'm sure this was probably previously announced, but they showcased a good amount of Story Seasons Pioneers of Olive Town.
Yeah,
and
it was
the reason the reason I wanted to mention that it's coming out in March 23rd is, honestly, I'm up for playing a new Harvest Moon. It's been a long time. I have not played Harvest Moon since the one on GameCube. I think it was It's a Wonderful Life, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like, obviously I played through Stardew, and we'll get to talking about my time at Portia later. But basically, I haven't played an actual Harvest Moon game or Story Seasons since the GameCube. So I have heard the remake of Friends of Mineral Town is actually really good as well. And that's on Switch already. So maybe I should play that one. But yeah, it's this looks really cool. I just, sometimes you just want to, like, search out comments of people that are going to be confused or, like, reactionary, just to kind of I don't know, you're just interested. And I
wait, can I guess what you're doing?
Yeah,
Can I guess you're doing this whole stupid thing of, like, I'm smarter than everyone else, where you're like, oh, are people thinking this is a Stardew Valley clone? Because actually, they created this, and then it inspired them to make Stardew Valley. Is that what you're doing?
100%. But the difference is replying. I just want to read people's reactions, because it's fun. It's fun to see people, like, be ignorant.
Ignorant. You're ignorant. It is weird though, because the whole. I don't remember the whole backstory. I remember hearing it once and then I forgot it, about why they can't use the Harvest name anymore. Harvest Moon name. Is it just they're not working with the IP holder, right?
Yeah. So it was never known as Harvest Moon in Japan.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I believe so. And it's. It was never known as Story Seasons. I don't think. I think there's an English, a Western name that they came up with after they moved on from the publisher. But yeah, it's basically like the publisher and the IP, and they've continued the Harvest Moon series. But honestly, the new Harvest Moon, like, non-Harvest Moon games, does that make sense? Look really, really cheap and kind of crappy, whereas Story Seasons games, they look like Harvest Moon. They look like the original games, So just checking it now, it seems like it was called Farm Story when we called it Harvest Moon. Well, sorry, it was called here Harvest Moon. And then when it went to Story of Seasons, it was called
what is it? Barn Store? No, sorry, I had it. Ranch Story in Japanese. Okay. So yeah, it's kind of like, it's much clearer, I think, anyway, when you look at it. Yeah. Why did they change the name? I'm actually now confused again, because it seems like it's the same developer and publisher.
No, there was definitely a publisher. There's a story out there that, you know, we don't really have time to go into about.
They lost the rights or something.
Because Harvest Moon has continued as its own separate thing.
Has it? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there are
Harvest Moon 3DS games, but I didn't realize there's any other coming out.
So there are new Harvest Moon games, but Story Seasons are the original Harvest Moon development. Yes, 100%. Okay. There's Harvest Moon games, newer Harvest Moon games since Story Seasons.
More than 3DS.
Well, yeah, but Story Seasons was already around at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, it's different, not the original developers. Yeah, I know that for a fact. But I just don't know the last fake Harvest Moon, if that makes sense.
Who developed it and stuff like that.
Yeah, like the timeline of that, like, but Story Seasons is the continuation of that series. So.
Yeah,
anyway,
definitely.
Enough about Story Seasons. I wanted to talk about, very quickly, I've typoed it here, is Immortal Fenyx Rising.
It's the worst name. I know they can't do the Gods and Monsters thing, but this Immortal Fenyx Rising is just such a bad name.
Oh, it's a bad name.
It's horrible.
I'm still looking forward to playing this game, but I'm definitely not looking forward to playing it on the Nintendo Switch because it looks like it runs like absolute crap. So that's why I wanted to just quickly mention it, is that they did the right thing. They showed the actual Switch gameplay, but it did not do it in any favors.
No.
If you talk about a game that would have been ripe for cloud streaming, which we'll get to in a second, that would have been one of them. So it's that game. I hope it still plays. It probably still plays okay, but it looks like it runs really rough. So if you've got multi-platforms, play that on something else unless you really want it portable.
But I mean, you know, when you said that it looks rough, you know, it should be a cloud game. I mean, like, the game is riffing off Breath of the Wild, so it's kind of like it's not like it can't look good. It's just like they haven't put the effort in, which I understand from a business perspective.
It's riffing off of it, but we've talked about before. People forget that it's riffing off Assassin's Creed way more than Breath of the Wild. There's elements of Breath of the Wild, 100%. But like, when people start talking about, it's got climbing, it's like, oh, come on. Assassin's Creed, come on. Like,
you're like,
come on.
Actually, Assassin's Creed had climbing.
That isn't it, actually. That's like, dude, come on. Like,
well, I'll just say this quickly, because we're not going to cover everything in the direct, but there was a few games, man, they look choppy as hell in the actual direct.
Tropico looks rough.
Tropico 6. Oh my god.
I mean, that's a like a management, like a, not an RTS, but like
but like it was dropping frames in the trailer.
Oh yeah.
Like, what?
But it was the wrong, like, I think, like, the way you show that game is you show it actually with the HUD, you show it like looking like what you play the game, rather than like this cinematic thing that just looks rough.
Oh, it was the weirdest trailer. It was a very odd trailer. Like, I kind of dozed off in that one.
The Tropico games are really kind of weird though.
Immortal Fenyx Rising, it's so dumb. The way they're presenting it and the name and everything turns me off the game. I actually think I wouldn't mind the game. So I want to give it a crack sometime. But it's just the whole presentation, the name, everything just doesn't click with me at all. So
yeah.
And did you want to jump into, like, because there's two big ones, right? There's either the cloud stuff, as you alluded to. Do you want to go into that first, or do you want to go into the big game for Nintendo this quarter?
Well, I don't think this is big news, but you can talk about it now. The Hyrule Warriors demo.
Yeah. So there's more information about Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. So I have this game on pre-order, but it'll be a Christmas kind of game. And I'm still getting through Hyrule Warriors, the first one. So did you download the demo?
No.
Okay. So I downloaded the demo.
Did you think would you expect me to download it?
Why not? Why not?
Anyway.
I don't know why you wouldn't.
Well, I haven't even played through Breath of the Wild, so why would I care about this game at this point?
Yeah, but okay, so that's a great segue. This game is like really interesting. Like I'm still pumped for this game. And playing through the whole demo, it was very generous, the demo. Like, I'm not that good of a gamer, but I was playing through it all. It was probably like an hour and a half. And I captured all the footage from it, but it was like a decent demo. Like, I was, with the old school demos, they stop you halfway through and it's like, it's so annoying. I was just like, are they going to let me play another like level? I'm like, all right. And it was like, two main battles that they made you play. And each one can be like 20, 30 minutes depending on how you play it. And then like 2 challenge areas, and just gets you a sense of how the game's going to work. The game is like really interesting to me because it's such a weird one. It's so obvious, like you probably should play Breath of the Wild before playing this game. And I know when I say that, it kind of seems to go without saying by saying that, but it's also like so different to Breath of the Wild, and man, this game is so super jank. Like, I actually think this game's jankier than Hyrule Warriors, which everyone, when they were talking about it, was like, oh, Hyrule Warriors, it's so much better than Fire Emblem Warriors. And these are all like the Switch ones that I'm talking about. But this game, when I was playing it, and I played a bit of Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity, the demo, man, it was like really dropping frames all the time.
That's what I was going to ask, because jank to me is less about performance and jank's more about, low textures,
it's not
buggy,
that, it's not
glitchy.
That. No, the one is that, because it tries to use the Breath of the Wild mechanics. And I know you're not a fan of the game, and we'll have a special episode on it eventually covering the game. We'll just dedicate to that game, talking about it. But, and we can always point to that episode. But, like, it tries to take those mechanics, but those mechanics, and Nintendo, one thing you will say about first-party Nintendo games, the way they control, it's very refined. Like, they spend a lot of time on it. And, in Breath of the Wild, it's so seamless, the way you move and the movement options and all that stuff. And they've taken them, but it's like, it honestly is like a fan-made version of it. It's like a mod or something. And like, you do these things where you'd like jump off the walls, but it's so janky. It's like you're clipping through things. It's all over the place. It just doesn't work at all. It's like, it's weirdly charming though, ultimately. That's why I'm still keen on the game.
Like, do you get the impression that this game was rushed? Or do you think that would have just been like that regardless?
The thing is, you just got to look through the Muso, Dynasty Warriors history. I mean, the games are pretty janky games. So, like, and they run poorly on every platform they're on. I know, I get it. Like, there's literally 50, 100 enemies on the screen. So, you probably expect it to run poorly, but I don't know. I'm not sure, dude. Like, maybe not, because it's not any less janky, really, than other Muso games, but to me, my experience, it's a little bit jankier than Hyrule Warriors, which is pretty amazing. And you never know, man. This demo, they might have cut the demo like a month ago and got it up and running and everything like that. And the game's improved a lot since then, hopefully. But I'm still picking it up. I'm still interested in it. Because it is a bit of a... the games are so relaxing to me because it's just like mashing buttons and, literally thousands of enemies dying. And, it's got this funny, like, story to it. And, more Breath of the Wild story. I'm keen on that. I will say, spoiler alert, if you haven't played the demo. And, I mean, this is revealed straight away. But, there was, like, a little, robot on the cover. And everyone's like, what is this robot thing? And I actually don't recall the name of it. But it's actually a guardian. And this is so funny to me. It's a guardian from the future. So it's almost like a Terminator timeline plot. Like, literally, this guardian is sent from the future to protect Princess Zelda. That's the story of this game. Like, on top of, the Breath of the Wild story it's going to tell with the Calamity.
But I mean, like, time travel is not a new thing in Zelda, so...
No, I know, but, like, is it, like, literally like a Terminator style, a robot is sent from the future to the past to protect this girl? Like, it's like, whoa, this is so weird.
So can I give my take on what I've seen of this game?
Yeah.
From someone that has never played Hyrule Warriors, played a little bit of Dynasty Warriors here and there, and has not completed Breath of the Wild. So,
and you're a known hater of Breath of the Wild.
hate is a strong word. A known disliker.
You take pleasure in disliking it. And
I do
different.
take pleasure in disliking.
yeah, exactly.
So when I look at this game,
yeah.
Now, Hyrule Warriors, I know that game is crazy. Like, plays all these like ridiculous characters, ridiculous moves, but all that stuff's like non-canon, right? It's just like a love letter to Zelda.
Yeah, it's
characters
fun.
And stuff,
yeah,
right?
it's fun.
Exactly. Whereas this game is canon, isn't it?
100%. They worked with the Zelda team,
so
like Ayunuma and everything.
To me, without having played through all of Breath of the Wild, the fact that this is a Muso game and so they go crazy with the crazy moves and stuff, it's like a jump the shark moment for like it's like it's I look at it and I'm like, did they even no, just for like what Muso? The characters can do and I'm like, man, this doesn't feel like it feels like it's a Warriors game, so of course they're gonna have this crazy stuff, but as soon as you make it canon in the same like timeline as Breath of the Wild, and I guess the wider one, who knows about that, but it's like, man, that's when it kind of just a bit ridiculous to me. And it is cool that they showed all those what are those giant bloody things? What are they called?
Guardians.
The celestial beast things or whatever.
Oh, the divine beast.
Divine beast. Sorry. It's cool that they showed that stuff. It looked like it ran a bit rough, but I guess it's very canned, like gameplay sections, which is cool. But it's like, it's almost like I hope that people don't get annoyed by this game kind of like messing around with the canon too much. But yeah, anyway.
I think people are really excited about it. I think it's like an odd game because essentially, if you want to learn more about Breath of the Wild story, you'll do it through this kind of almost interactive movie, which is the game. And then if you're a Muso fan, it's like, okay, it's like a new Muso game, new mechanics and stuff. So look, like what I will say about it is like there are definitely things that it's janky as hell compared to Breath of the Wild's mechanics, but the story and the way it was presented compared to Hyrule Warriors straight away felt like it wasn't a Zelda game. Like the first 5 minutes of playing it, I was like, this feels like a fan game. And I loved it, and I still love that game, and I think it's really fun, and it's just, charming in its crazy, poorly made in some ways. I don't want to be too offensive on that way, but this game actually did feel more like a Zelda game. It was quite odd. Like, I was playing it, I was like, it just, the combat doesn't though. That's the thing. It's like everything around it, it feels very like Zelda-like for me. It's got that vibe, and then you get into the combat, and it just feels like a Muso game. It's very odd.
And that's where and I know it's like that because it is a Muso game, but it's like, Breath of the Wild, like your skill set, you'd be lucky to take out a couple of enemies at once, and now like Link's like taking out 50 at once in these huge suites and stuff. Anyway,
it's odd. I'm actually seriously, this is out of the games I'm getting and all the games coming out. All these games, that are coming out, Demon's Souls. This is the game I'm looking forward to the most. And I'm just looking at my gameplay footage, so we have it on YouTube. But the game is so janky that it's like it's optimal to just like do these weird dashes all the time, and just looks so dumb the way that like Link moves around. It's just, I don't know. It's fun. It's stupid fun. Like that's the way I just think about these Muso games. So yeah, I'm looking forward to playing through. I do want to get further into Hyrule Warriors. That game, man, I get like I don't know if you use this site, but I always use howlongtobeat.com just to get a sense for how long games are and all that kind of stuff. And I jumped on that site with Hyrule Warriors, the first one, and there were like hundreds of hours to complete it. I was like, what? And having played it, I get that. Like the amount of stuff that they give you is insane. And you know what? Like I wouldn't mind in this game if they make it a lot shorter. Like, and it might really annoy people, but I'd like that actually. If it was like 50 hours to do everything in this game, that would be perfect for me.
That's all right. They'll make a Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity Definitive Edition for them for Switch Pro or something.
Oh, and beautiful segue about the performance of the Switch, what's happening with the Switch. How are they going to compete with next gen Nintendo? Like, what ideas do they have?
You mean current gen?
nice, touche. But definitely next gen, hey? Like that's another level. So what did they reveal in the American version of the Direct? So I watched the Australian one and I didn't see this stuff until after it came out.
Oh, really? Okay. See,
they cut it out of the Australian version.
Oh, that makes sense. 100%.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, but I didn't know about it until after. And I'm like, what did I miss? So and then I realized there's 2 minutes missing.
So they start off with a trailer and you're like, oh, wait. Control? This is Control? And then, yes, Control is coming to the Switch. Control Ultimate Edition, that game that has had absolutely no controversy about it.
Exactly.
But as a cloud streaming game for the at least the US, I'm not sure all regions, definitely not Australia.
Only US.
And I would just say before we get, just to quickly cover this, in the same Direct, they also announced Hitman 3 cloud version coming in January. So Control is available now, and Hitman 3
$40, so it's like 60 Australian dollars, which is not too bad.
I don't know how I feel about a cloud version being close to full retail price game, but
no, I think
clearly it's worked for Stadia, but
no, but I think if you think about the US experience, right, like Control is selling in the US for like, I'd say $50. So, and you got the Nintendo Premium. Whether you want to believe it or not, there's a Nintendo Premium.
I know,
like, they just put extra money on it. It's like Apple.
Okay, if you buy a digital game, right? Yeah. You have it installed on your system, unless there's a licensing that checks, which I know some platforms do, but generally, if you've got it installed, like PT, for instance, on PlayStation 3 is, or PlayStation 4? PlayStation 4. Then it is, at least if the game is taken off and you can't re-download, then at least it's still there. So it's some form of having it. With a cloud game, you have no option at all. And that's why it's like, even it just stings a bit that it's priced that point. I'm not saying the game isn't worth it to play through. I know it's meant to be a great game, and it comes with all the expansions, which are pretty sizable. It's just, man, when you start talking about streaming games at that price point,
this is what you wanted. You know, I've never been a huge fan.
Like, I'm very. This is what I wanted. What do you mean? This is what I wanted. When did I ever say that?
I'm more of a physical collector. Like, I like physical games. I'm always very averse to digital games. For me, I don't really put digital and cloud on too much of a different platform. Like, because effectively the rights and all the way that they work are very similar between cloud and digital games. Like, I wouldn't even be shocked if the license agreements and the terms and conditions aren't even that different between the two. I understand the perception's different, but
from a usability standpoint, though, if you have a digital game, unless it's an online game, which is its own thing, we know that, like a multiplayer, that I could be on a train going through the tunnel and be playing Control.
But that's a different thing. You're not talking about that. You're not talking about that. You're talking about the feeling of ownership and everything.
No,
that's not fair. That's not fair.
No. This is another point I'm making.
Sure, that's but let's just address that. That's a separate point, right?
But let me continue my second point then.
Okay. Well, that's a separate point than what you're saying, though.
Yeah, it's my second point.
Go on.
My second point is that then, like, you're saying that digital and that, like, to me, like, the usability of you're paying totally for something that you just are so restricted in where you can and the circumstances you can play it. And also, I don't know the exact details for people on the full experience at the moment, but there's queues in some of these cloud games,
yeah, that's true, yeah.
And
they would have to be, yeah.
So with the demo, there was queues. Now, obviously, you're going to have heaps of people, especially this because it's the first cloud game released in the West and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But then suddenly there's times when you may not actually be able to play it if it's a super popular game and it's just come out and you're like, oh man, I'm like 20th in the queue for my region or whatever. And it's like, I just have to wait. It's like,
although I would say, like, from everything I heard, for people who have good internet in the States, they didn't have an issue with getting on and playing it. And basically everyone said it worked really, really well. And I mean, I don't want to have a told you so kind of moment, but even like last week, I was like saying, surely Xbox is trying to woo Nintendo to get xCloud onto the Switch, because it does become a platform to quickly get next-gen games, and, games that are just so far beyond what a portable console could handle. That's a really good use case. And if you deeply integrate it into the system, you can potentially cut out, avenues that introduce lag into the system. Because, with a phone, there's inherent lag in like the touch interface and everything you do with the phone, just, having coded apps before. Whereas, having a Switch, because you can just talk directly to the hardware itself, it does eliminate some input lag and some other sort of issues that you may have. But look, like getting back to where you're coming from, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not a huge fan of digital games in the first place. Like, it's partly why it was so hard for me to go on to Game Pass, because I feel like, I'm playing these games, but I don't own them, and I don't, I won't be able to play them again in some cases. And I'm like, shit, will I have to just go buy them again? Like, that's kind of a bit stupid. But, I'm treating it as a trial, like $4 a month for the potty, so I can play some of the new games that are coming out. It made sense to me, but I don't know, just not a big fan of digital games in general. And that's why I get so cranky when you can't even play the games that are on the disc. But,
and
like, that's rubbish. But yeah,
don't get
it's
me
going to
wrong,
be good
though,
for people who don't have multiple consoles, dude. Like, there's some people, like, I've literally heard on podcasts, people who are like, I've always wanted to play this game. I don't have any other console apart from the Switch, and now I got to play it, and it's awesome.
Don't get me wrong. Like, I actually really like the idea. I'm not against the idea of cloud streaming, which I actually think it's a great way.
You just think the price.
The price of when you start getting close to the price point of a retail digital, like local.
Well, I just checked. So I was wrong. In the States, Control Ultimate Edition, so like the PS4 disc version, which is the definitive version now because it's got everything on it. You don't need to install anything, unlike the Xbox version. That is $40 US. So they are charging the exact same amount of money for a cloud-based game.
And when you factor in the Switch tax, which is a thing, as you said,
it's probably a little bit of a discount. Yeah, in their mind, not in reality, but in their mind.
So, but I think I love the idea, and I'm an idiot in that, like, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I'm going to jump on the sea if I can access it. Of course I couldn't. And I'm like, why was I even thinking that?
But I actually think it's, I'm actually really surprised with the worldwide rollout of these kind of systems, because, if I can, on a personal account on Amazon Web Services, spin up instances of my own web service around the world, and that's quite reasonable for me to do. I don't think it's that hard anymore for them to do this in major locations, and I'm not expecting them to do this in Latin America or places with poorer internet infrastructure, but places like Australia, Europe, like Japan, South Korea, that kind of little hub there's no excuse really for them to not be spinning this up in those regions. And again, I'm adamant, like, it takes a lot of the buzz out of it, because, it's like you're restricted. You try to go on, you try to do it, and it doesn't work. And you're like, mentally, it's like becomes a negative in your mind, I reckon.
So did you mention Japan then?
Yes.
So, I mean, we know that Japan has had streaming games on the Switch in the past. I don't know if they're still available. I'd assume so.
They are, but that was different games and a different provider.
Different games, different providers. But the reason I kind of want to mention it is that some outlets have been good about pointing that out, but it's surprising the amount of people that kind of just haven't done their research about that as well. Because I remember hearing about this and thinking, oh man, that's crazy. They're doing this stuff. I wonder, when they'll start doing this over here. But it's interesting. So it wouldn't surprise me if RE7 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey do make their way here. Now that it seems like Nintendo's kind of like the doors have been open, if that makes sense. And we know that there's apparently been a data mine that's apparently unveiled Resident Evil 3 Remake cloud version as well.
Are you being sensitive? Because I hate, like, rumors.
This one seems real.
This one's
pretty real. Yeah. So
I agree.
With one of the worst box art like version where they just added. It's actually I've sort of comment. It's like, hey, I remade the logo for you in like 2 minutes, and it looks way better. And it's like, come on.
Yeah. Look, this whole streaming thing's super inevitable. I think there's certain games it's going to work so well for, and I think a game like Resident Evil 7, games that aren't like twitchy, I think they'll be fine. I think even Assassin's Creed Odyssey, if you've got a really good internet connection and you can, like for me, when I play Rocket League, my ping is like 9 or 8. Like it's nothing. So I'm only going to lose like, whatever. It's, 5 or 10 frames at most. So, very playable, I reckon, a lot of these games. I don't think it's playable on some of the games they try to get people to play. Like the first-person shooters and stuff like that. It's like, what are you doing? Like, it's just, that's not a smart idea to launch with that stuff. But, probably the last thing I want to say on this, I don't know if you want to go on about it, but I'm actually kind of a bit worried because my view is, and I haven't mentioned this before, but, it feels very inevitable. Just, if you're looking at history with Nintendo, they'll do a revision of the Switch next year. It's time for that. It's probably even overdue for a revision. And, with a revision, at a minimum, it's going to be faster. Now, whether it's so much faster or it's just moderately faster, it's going to be faster at a minimum, just like with the 3DS and the new 3DS. There's a whole bunch of games I'm actually putting to the side, very, very organized. I've put them to the side to play once the new one comes out because they're a bit choppy on the current system. And part of me is almost like, I wish I could put Age of Calamity on the side because it will run better. But games like the Xenoblade trilogy, essentially, sort of, Xenoblade and Xenoblade 2 and Torna, I've actually put them to the side and I'll play them when the new Switch comes out.
Xenoblade seems to run pretty well, the remake.
What was that?
Xenoblade Chronicles, the remake, seems to run pretty well.
It still drops a lot of frames, dude.
I mean, I've been playing through it. It seems pretty good to me. Like, yeah, I haven't come across anything that's... Like, I know a choppy game when I play one,
Sure. I'm just, like, super sensitive to that kind of stuff. Like, I know I should put that context around everything I'm saying. Like, I'm crazy. I'll, like, get a CRT so I can play games, like, with no lag. You know what I mean? Like, I hate that kind of stuff.
I'm specifically talking about the remake, like, the remake
Yeah, I know, the definitive edition.
I'm not like the sequel or anything like that.
Yeah, the sequel is really choppy, and I know it's much worse than the definitive edition. But the thing I guess my point is, the thing that I worry about this whole thing is that developers, and just thinking from a business perspective, they look at Witcher 3, right? I just think, if you're CD Projekt Red, like, why would you spend a year and a lot of money investing in porting Witcher 3 onto the Switch when you can just, like, spin it up on a cloud version, And I think that's the biggest thing that's going to annoy me with this whole trend. And it's inevitable, unfortunately. But even with the Switch revision, I think, the upper end games, the Cyberpunks, I think Cyberpunk will come to the Switch, but it'll be like a cloud version. And that sucks because I love the Switch as a portable device. Like, I literally use it all the time for that. And just, I know, chopping from like Wi-Fi to Ethernet, mobile, whatever, it's going to cause the game to stuff up and be real funny. And I don't know, it's going to bother the hell out of me. So yeah, that's the one thing I'm going to be a bit sad about. Like, do you think that they're going to, like, still want to port those games?
I mean, they already don't port most of them.
Yeah, but do you think that they'll just go, like, streaming now?
Yeah, because, I mean...
Like Doom Eternal.
Well, yeah, see, Doom Eternal, I think, is a very specific use case because people are really expecting that one to be ported, whereas I think a lot of these other games, no one would have ever expected a port of Control or Hitman 3, which isn't even out yet.
Yeah.
No one would have ever expected, especially considering Control has enough issues on current gen. Like, even the PS4 Pro struggles with Control, and that's a pretty powerful system, So,
yeah, that's the one knock on the game that most people have.
Yeah, and it's that game has a lot going on from by all accounts. So, I mean, without this cloud option, I mean, you wouldn't have had any other option to play Control. So, other than the price point, I only see it as a positive, and
yeah,
I hope this opens the doors to to more games, but as someone that lives in Australia, I don't know if we'll ever have access to them.
Oh, we will. I mean, and I'm really excited early next year. Well, I don't think so. Like early next year, xCloud's coming to Australia. So I'm super keen to try that out when it launches. Like we'll have to do a lot of testing on that to see how it all goes. And I think, the rest will follow really rapidly. I think it will happen a lot quicker than you think once it starts to happen. Because, especially if it's like, the dream would be xCloud going to Switch. Because, they're already going to be coming to Australia. So you'd think that it'd just start to work. But yeah, no, it's interesting. And, continuing on the topic of cloud gaming,